Hey, Amby. Um, I just got to do, I'm trying to, I need, I need a producer or a wife or a skill. Oh, God. Sent it to the wrong place. Hmm. I'm incredibly technologically challenged and also impatient, which really really doesn't help. Okay, now let me see if I can do this. Because if I were more patient, I'd get things done before I signed on, I suppose. Okay, it's just taking a second. Hey, everybody. Al, Todaro, the one, Ramiro. June, Tim, Brian, CC, Ryder. Let me just, I wanted to put, let me see if it downloaded. All right, one of them did. So I've got to delete. Delete. Now add. All right, I can add this. So, hey, Matt, how are you? Welcome. I always remember now, now I can't remember if it was your grandfather or your father. I think it was your father who died, and that was very touching and painful. And, there never are any words. But now we all go through it, don't we? We all go through that. It's the weirdest thing. I suppose father, yeah, it's terrible. I doubt it's any better. It's not for me, but then something like a dog dies, and it's as I don't know. People have thought about it since time began. Why are we born? And if life is so brutish and short, why do we want to stay? But anyway, I'm sorry you lost your father. Anyway, I'm coming on early because Ham's coming on at 4, and he's going to be on fire, I think, on a couple of ideas. And for me, he wanted me to get prepared. I doubt I'm going to say much. He'll just be off and running. But for me, I started, I read and I'm thinking about things and reviewing various sources I've listened to for 2 or 3 decades in some cases, not necessarily on YouTube, but in other manners. And reading the newspapers, I still read. It's amazing. I could not start the day without reading the Washington Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Baltimore Sun back when, and the Orioles, New York Post, New York Daily News, maybe the LA Times, or if I were in London, I'd read 4 or 5 newspapers there, the Telegraph, the Times, the Financial Times, the Guardian, Evening Standard. But now I just really don't read the news. Why? Because I'm a connoisseur of newspapers and news, and to quote James Carville, the news has just become preachy school teachers. It's just made up lecturing, telling me what the truth is without any obvious evidence. One thing that comes to mind, I got a lot of grief here a couple of years ago when I made the statement roughly that there's no way we were going to win the war in the Ukraine. And everybody jumped on me. And I was just watching, I think it was Jimmy Dore, and he had a cutout of all the mainstream media outlets about how we were going to win, Russia's weak, Ukraine. Well, look at it now. Look at it now. I'm not going to talk too much about the Ukrainian war because that could go on forever. But Trump is meeting with Putin to discuss the war in Saudi Arabia, which, by the way, was something I predicted to my brother, and he remembered it, that it would be in Saudi Arabia, and that they would meet. But they're not inviting Zelensky. Well, why would this be happening? Why would this be happening? I think Trump is a realist. And it's a lot like, I wish this bartender, I wish I had written down her advice to me. Years ago, there was a woman I was in love with and dating, and I got back from a trip and she was, the irony of it all was that she got jealous of me for some stupid thing, which led into a fight, and then led into me asking her, well, where were you? Who was that guy? Which I normally don't do, which I probably should. But anyway, this bartender, a woman, told me what people do. In her case, it was a woman, but they say things like, first they say, you're crazy. Then they say, I can't remember. It's something like, then they say, well, you're doing it. And then they say something like, I can't remember. Something like, I'm not giving you details, or I'm not talking about it. I don't know, the whole thing, nightmare. But the point is, there's a lot of bluster. They're caught off guard, bluster. Well, that's a lot of what Trump's doing. Apparently, according, I believe, to Colonel McGregor, the United States, if we went to war right now, just full-on war, let's say in the Middle East, on behalf of this saint, Netanyahu, absolute saint. I could show you pictures of the destruction, both on the day of October 7th, which was terrible, absolutely horrifying, and versus the destruction in the 2 years since, a year and a half since. I don't know. I guess in Israel there's a different definition for eye for an eye, and I guess if the Messiah hasn't come, I don't know. Just showing my own weakness in the Bible, I thought the Lord said, "Vengeance is mine." I don't know if that's in the Torah or if it's in the New Testament, but I guess the Beatitudes and the Sermon on the Mount and all those other things, that if the Messiah hasn't come, you haven't heard. But I still think an eye for an eye as a definition, I don't know. These are poor eyes and ears, and maybe I don't see what the defenders of Netanyahu see, including Rubio, including Trump. So that's a place we could go to war. Middle East, we could go to war over Taiwan. And if the zealots for Ukraine, for a Ukrainian war, if we could go to war there, but I can think of other places too. Apparently, we would run out of, I don't know what to call it, ordnance. We'd run out of bullets, missiles, things to kill with, things to launch. We would run out in approximately 2 weeks. 2 weeks. We don't have the facilities to ramp up quickly. So I think Trump is a realist. I think Trump looks at this and says, we can't afford to be at war anymore. We can't send these weapons to Zelensky, who funnels the money and funnels the wealth back to the United States, to the Democratic Party. How does Samantha Powers become worth $30 million? How does Chelsea Clinton receive $82 million? How does Dick Cheney's daughter, who lied and destroyed evidence about J6, how does she receive millions of dollars? There's a slush funds going around, but Trump's looking at it. He's ignoring all that fantasy thinking, and he's saying, wait a minute, we're at real risk here. We can't defend ourselves. So I think Trump wants to end the war in Ukraine. And what does that mean? That means Ukraine is going to lose 5 oblasts, and probably Chernobyl. Who would want Chernobyl? I don't know. Might lose Kiev, the Russian pronunciation of that city. And Ukraine will not be part of NATO. Well, are we really going to risk our very existence on those 2 issues? I don't think so. So Zelensky's upset. Trump is meeting with Putin. I think that deal will be hammered out in about 30 minutes. Now, what's going to be harder is I think Trump wants to pull a Doc Kissinger, and it's too late. The women that have run foreign policy, not knowing what they're doing, and a couple of the simps like Blinken and Sullivan, have forced Russia into the arms of China, particularly by using the dollar as a cudgel for sanctions and all manner of things that offended these women. Well, men tend to solve problems. You don't want to let us use the SWIFT system? You're going to steal our monies to pay for the war in Ukraine? We'll create our own alliances. We have for generations been wary of the great yellow horde. We have long memories of Genghis Khan and others, but we don't speak the same languages. We're no longer communist. We are communist. But let's sort it. Let's see what we can do. So Russia, a country massively wealthy in resources, massively wealthy in energy, blessed by a hardworking, well-educated population, maybe sad, maybe a bit stoic beyond what we have ever experienced, maybe forged in centuries of hardship, cold, want, hunger, death, and a realization that not everything in Asia, in the eastern part of Europe, can be controlled by mankind. But yet, these people, this hardworking population who is extraordinarily similar to the Americans, the vibe, let's get going, let's just do it, let's make it happen, come on, let's go. And in many ways, far more transformative of the given environment to create a country, this population set to work under a man who, by the way, Vladimir Putin, has returned the church to Russia, God to Russia. I'll leave it to you if you think God is an active part of Europe or the United States. It's not my point. But Russia is no longer godless, which is what the Saudis back in the 90s turned the taps of oil on to bury, to use Khrushchev's words, the Soviet Union because it was godless. God is back in Russia. And then you've got China. The hardest, perhaps the people of Israel are harder working, or at least as hard working over the last 50 years. But the Chinese as a people are extraordinarily hardworking. Wherever they are, I won't give examples that are things I've read or heard. I'll just tell you, when I lived as a young boy in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, a third of the population or more was Chinese. And what I remember driving through, there weren't that many cars, but the embassy car would. The reason I remember that is the engine went on fire one time, and there was so much drama as we were going through, and then we got to the embassy, and anyway, that's why it sticks in my head. But anyway, when you went through Chinatown and the rest of the city, then the Chinese worked hard. So I'm not making that up. But so you have a China who is ready to become not only the industrial power of the world, but also a consumer nation. But what does China lack? China does not have an abundance. I mean, there's many things they lack. Arable land, perhaps clean water, maybe daughters. Sorry. But they lack abundant oil and natural gas. Who has it? Russia. So what does Victoria Nuland figure out? Let's piss off Putin. Let's isolate Xi. Well, these guys, it doesn't take them long enough. Why don't you build a pipeline? We'll pay you in yuan. And Putin says, which one? And he says, all right, we'll pay you in gold. And you send us your oil. So that's what's been going on. So Trump looks at this, and I think he must be shocked. He's looking at a potential run on the dollar. The United States dollar, the United States bond market, the United States financial markets are supported by our energy, our hard work, our creativity, the fact that the rest of the world has wanted to live in the United States. But we have forfeited our integrity and our honesty and our bell of freedom. We've forfeited over the last 20, 30 years. As feminism has risen, as this arbitrary analysis of equity has risen, which I'm not going to judge any of that, but this role reversal has happened where the United States has become almost Marxist in its ideas, communist in its ideas of equality of results, and fade the truth, aged, doddering leaders, censorship, and if the economic numbers aren't there, make them up. No longer having honest elections. And newspapers that are propaganda mouthpieces for the government, for the military. That's what the Soviet Union used to be. You guys are too young to remember the three presidents after Brezhnev, Koncherko. I can't even remember their names. They dotted across the stage just like Comrade Biden. But anyway, so Trump's looking at this, And I think he realizes how close we are to a run on our lifestyle, our life, our way of living. So he knows we got to stop spending money. We got to get out of these entanglements. We can't afford our defense budget anymore. And he's making steps to at least buy time on the US dollar. But all right, let's get to why I wanted to talk about that. I listened to a guy who's even more long-winded than I am, but very smart, a guy named Simon Hunt. According to him, now I've told you, let's start where I want to start with Knox. Here's Fort Knox. Oh, no, it's not. That's Foxy Knoxy. I am proud of my one-night stands and drugs use, says Foxy Knoxy. Amanda Knox said she is proud of her one-night stands. They're empowering. All right, so it's not what I wanted to show you. Elon Musk, by the way, Ham will talk about it with you. Elon Doge has come up with a site on the SEC. Anyway, Doge prepares gold reserve audit after top Republican invites Elon Musk to review Fort Knox. Guys, if this does not make you shake in your boots, I don't know what will. The United States, I didn't get a printout of this, and I'm afraid to show anything running at the same time because I don't want my stream stopped. Okay, in 2024, let's go by the World Gold Council. They don't give a list. I'm sorry, I should have gotten that. Let me go with a different, just click another. All right, gold reserves by trading economics. Gold reserves by country. This is here, let me get this out of here. So they're gonna audit the gold that the United States of America has at Fort Knox. The question you have to be asking yourself is, do you feel lucky? Well, do you, punk? There's very smart people that don't think there's any gold at Fort Knox, nor any virtue with Foxy Knoxy. All right, so this is from Trading Economics, gold reserves by country. Numero uno, United States, 8,133 tons. Numero doso, Germany, 3,352 tons. Tre is Italy, 2,452 tons. Quattro is France, 2,437. Piatz is Russia, 2,336. I have no idea how you say that. But coming in number 6 is China at 2,280 tons. Then it's Switzerland, India, Japan, Turkey, Netherlands, the entire Euro area, Poland, Taiwan, Portugal, Uzbekistan, Saudi Arabia comes in slightly ahead of the United Kingdom at 310, Lebanon, Kazakhstan, Spain, Australia, Thailand, Belgium, Singapore, Algeria, Venezuela, Iraq, Libya, Brazil, Philippines, Egypt, Sweden, South America, Mexico, Greece, Qatar, Hungary, South Korea, Romania. And below Romania, they don't have much gold. So it's being audited. Well, Simon Hunt recently was interviewed, and you got to dedicate an hour to listening just to get a few points, but he's very good. According to Simon Hunt, and I don't know where he gets his analysis, the true number for Russia, not 2,336 tons. And remember, it is assumed that the United States has 8,133 tons. Let me ask you, in the United States, if you own MMTLP, or if you own Finger, or if you own any of these other stocks, do you really believe that the United States of America's financial system has not hypothecated and rehypothecated and borrowed and lent non-existent ounces of gold and tons of gold? Whatever. All right, so Russia, according to the website Trading Economics, has 2,336 tons of gold in its bank reserves. According to Simon Hunt, Russia has 12,000 tons of gold. That's more than our supposed 8,000 tons. He says that it's owned by a company who is closely aligned with the Russian central bank. So it's a sleight of hand for Russia in terms of reporting. By the way, Russia used to have a lot of gold. It still has a lot of gold in the ground, I'm sure. But prior to the Russian Revolution and World War I, and the revolution stretched out a bit. It didn't just go from the Tsar to the Bolsheviks. Russia had a huge gold reserve, which was lost. I think it was the largest in the world, but it's since been lost to history. Anyway, China, according to Simon Hunt, and this is why I'm spending so much time on this, China, according to his sources, China has 25,000 tons of gold. 25,000 tons of gold. We supposedly have 8,000 tons of gold, and the common wisdom is that China has about the same amount of gold as Russia, 2,280 tons. If China does in fact have 25,000 tons of gold, if Russia has 12,000 tons of gold, and if we do have 8,000 tons of gold, but we only have 2 weeks' supply of bullets, if they call for the next Bretton Woods, I suppose it would be held in I don't know where it'd be held, wherever Putin could be safe from arrest by the women And wherever Trump could fly in, probably the Middle East. The United States would sit at that table either with no gold or third in the pecking order. He who has the gold makes the rules. And I think Trump knows this. I think Trump knows this. So there was a article. There was an article posted on the website Daily Reckoning by Adam Sharp on February 14th. And this is just one example of a cacophony of written, interview, evidence of a physical problem. I was listening to Alistair MacLeod, somebody I've followed for 20 years. And he pointed out that I don't know if I wrote it down, so I'll have to just remember it. Yeah, I guess I didn't write it down. But Alistair MacLeod pointed out that in London and COMEX, the LBMA, he pointed out that they're not making delivery. When people are standing for delivery for gold and standing for delivery for silver, they're not making delivery. It should take a day, couple of days. It's taking weeks, if not months. And his question, which stuck in my head, what's the definition of default? Is default when someone stands for delivery, you don't deliver? Is that default? Or is it because you're a Western financial system, you can say, hang on, let me look around back. We're fresh out of cheddar. This is, in fact, a cheese shop. Yes. Well, it seems uncontaminated by cheese. There may be no gold there. And I've noticed since COVID that there's a weird consciousness worldwide in the sense that ideas and change comes at lightning speed now. I don't know what happened. Maybe it's because we were all locked in with our computers, but things happen like this. And I'm making a call to all of you. You got to buy silver. You have to buy. If you can dedicate $4,000 to silver, you can buy 100 ounces of physical silver. Buy gold, but dedicate one mortgage payment, 2 mortgage payments to buying physical silver. It's going to be your way to protect yourself. By the way, Simon Hunt made a confusing analysis, which I'm not sure I fully understood. I re-listened to it about 5 times, and I think he knew what he was saying, but it didn't, I don't know, it must be me. I didn't get it completely. But if the world's holdings of gold outside of Russia and China, and I think he meant the United States as well, were revalued to today's prices, that gold would be worth $3 trillion, which would be a large percentage of the GDP of the rest of the world, not China, not Russia, not United States. That's how I took that point he was making, but I might have misinterpreted it. If the United States were to revalue the gold it supposedly has at today's prices, it wouldn't make $1 trillion. It's 750 billion. So we have a GDP, if you believe it, I don't know, anywhere from 20 to 30 trillion. You have to believe the numbers. You have to believe the value of the US dollar. You have to believe that when our government spends money, it actually adds to our gross domestic product, but whatever. And then there's ways of measuring it on a purchasing power basis. And China actually is bigger than we are, but whatever. So if we revalued our gold, it's just a small percentage of our overall GDP. But if China were to revalue its gold that they hold, it'd be 1/4 of its GDP. By one decision, China could instantly remove all issues as it relates to whether or not they're in financial difficulty or if they're a financial risk. They haven't done it yet. It's been my contention that they have not made those moves because they want to own more gold before the negotiation happens. But if Russia were to convert its gold to today's prices, their reserves would be equivalent to 1/3 of Russia's GDP. So here's what Trump's looking at. And I don't think Trump is afraid of the truth. I don't think Trump's afraid of negotiating. He knows the United States is powerful. Apparently, one of the reasons the dollar is the world's reserve currency, yes, it's American industrial power, but that's an old story. Yes, it's America won World War II, at least in the sense that we were the last economy standing. But that's an old story now. Yes, the United States has the deepest markets. Do you really believe that? Or are you listening to Gary Gensler? Yes, the United States has the most honest markets. Do you really believe that? I think that's probably yesterday's news as well. But apparently, which we all have lived through, one of the great reasons why the United States dollar became the world's reserve currency, and this has been true whether you are 30 years old or 70 years old, the United States has been the world's consumer nation. So if you're a tiny country starting out as a tiny country, like South Korea, economically, I mean, you don't have a lot of resources except your people. You create wealth by stamping made in Korea, made in Japan, made in China. Wealth is created by selling shit to the United States. We were the consumer nation after World War II. And people sold us shit for 60, 70, 80, 90 years. We don't sell anybody anything, except we sell fraudulent shares, fraudulent bonds, fraudulent precious metals, fraudulent tranches of CDOs, CBOs, whatever they are, collateralized debt obligation notes. But everyone believes us. And now we may be selling to the world that our power. What does it mean if we run out of functioning weapons to kill people with after 2 weeks? What does that mean if we want to win the war? It means we escalate our attacks to nuclear weapons, and nobody survives that. As Gorbachev pointed out, no one won the Cold War. No one can win a nuclear war. So anyway, Adam Sharp came out with this article, Missing Metals, the Big Gold Squeeze. Silver trades 90 ounces to 1 ounce of gold. That's not going to last very much longer. Gold is in the middle of a worldwide panic on delivery. It hasn't reached your consciousness yet because CNN doesn't talk about it. Erin, whatever her name is useless. But it will, as the Saudis, the Qataris, the Chinese, the Indians, the Iranis, the Polish continue to buy gold. This is going to become a big problem. And what can you, gold will go from 3,000 just on price movement, maybe $4,000 or $5,000 an ounce. What if, when Trump meets with Putin and shortly thereafter with Xi, and Trump agrees to lower our defense spending, maybe Putin and Trump come up with a nuclear arms agreement? I don't know, something dramatic. But what if Trump says, okay, let's create the new world financial system with the dollar numero uno? And they all revalue gold to today's price, or they revalue it to $10,000 an ounce. What's going to happen to silver? Anyway, Missing Metals, the Big Gold Squeeze by Adam Sharp. A constant stream of Boeing 737s packed full of gold are flying into America. Why do you think that is? Do you think that all those one-night stands by Fort Knox are coming home to roost? Is the gold there? Is the virtue extant at Fort Knox? Much of the bullion is coming from London, where the Bank of England is having some issues. Issues in delivering its customers gold. Bank of England is a major gold depository which claims to hold more than 5,000 metric tons of gold in its underground vaults. The precious metal is held for both central banks and commercial groups, but lately it's taking much longer than usual to withdraw bullion from the Bank of England. The Financial Times said, the wait to withdraw bullion stored in the Bank of England's vaults has risen from a few days to 4 to 8 weeks. And since the Financial Times reported that, the problem has gotten worse. Suddenly, gold in the Bank of England's vaults is valued $20 per ounce less expensively than the equivalent bullion in the New York City vaults. Why they trust New York better than Shanghai? How long are you going to be in Shanghai? I don't know. The cost to lease gold and silver has increased by roughly 300%. The cost to lease, hypothecate anybody? F3 button at Goldman Sachs, anybody? Oh, we'll lend you it. Oh, yeah, we'll deliver it down the road, anybody? The cost to lease, the cost to borrow gold and silver has gone up by 300% in just a matter of weeks. That's strange. Media outlets like Financial Times are speculating that the spike is tariffs. Pshaw. The Bank of England held a press conference last week. They explained that the delays are attributable to the fact that gold is heavy. And there aren't enough vans in the UK to transport it quickly enough. Maybe they should use Mini Coopers. Some of us in the gold community remain skeptical. We speculate something more nefarious is happening behind the scenes. What if the Bank of England leased out too much gold? What if your stockbroker sold too many shares of finger motion? What if Goldman Sachs lent out too many shares? I don't know, AMC, GME. Do you see a pattern in the Western financial markets? It's all fraud. It's all lies. It's all relying on us to still believe the system works. Leasing, quote unquote, out metals is a common practice for bullion banks, as it generates a small amount of income on assets that are otherwise dormant. You know what it reminds me of? Selling puts on your portfolio while the stock market's going up for 10 straight years. What's the risk? We bring in a little money, what's the risk? Leverage is a bear when it goes against you. And you're taking in small amounts of income and taking huge risks you don't understand. And the Bank of England isn't the only place where strange happenings are occurring in the precious metals space. Longtime Fed Chairman Alan Greenspan famously said, amongst all his other drivel, quote, "Central banks stand ready to lease gold in increasing quantities should the price of gold rise," unquote. To me, it sure sounds like that is an admission of a gold price suppression scheme. It would make perfect sense because the dollar's primary competitor has always been gold. In order for the dollar to shine the strongest, the mostest, the bestest, the premierest, gold needs to be kneecapped. That's why Greenspan quotes the quote by Greenspan. Is why Adam Sharp is so excited by the news this week that Ron Paul may assist Doge in auditing the Federal Reserve. Can you imagine? The Federal Reserve's going to be audited? Imagine how many one-night stands and how much drug use has been going on by the Federal Reserve. Fort Knox may be foxy noxy, but it may not have any virtue left. But as long as people don't know for sure, somebody will marry Fort Knox. But if they lift the skirt and find out for sure, who knows what happens to the US dollar? A user on X, formerly Twitter, suggested to Elon Musk that Ron Paul should assist in the effort, and Elon responded, "Good idea." I thought he responded, "Whoa, oh, that was that chick." This would be a lifelong dream of many of us coming true. Ron Paul has been a principal opponent of the Fed since his early days as a congressman. His book, End the Fed, is an all-time classic. I have no idea. I never read it. Who knows what Ron Paul and Doge would find if they audited the Fed? Evidence of precious metal price suppression? Perhaps. All of this is occurring as we have our first U.S. Treasury Secretary, who is a gold enthusiast. Scott Bessent has said gold is his #1 portfolio position. How long do you want to sit on the sidelines? I guess that's my message. I think we've run out of time. I've been hoping to make money in some of these trades and then put the profit in silver. I think we're all running out of time. And I strongly recommend that each of you consider putting $4,000 in silver. 100 ounces. 100 ounces of silver. Physical. Have it delivered home. Don't tell anybody. It might be all that keeps you in your lifestyle if there's a world financial crisis. And it'll never be cheaper than this. You can probably buy 100 ounces of silver for $3,300. It'll never be cheaper. But it's not, the dollar is not going to matter in the future. Precious metals are oil and gas, real estate, food, water. Scott Bessent has said gold is his #1 portfolio position. And for once, we have somebody at the Treasury who understands the appeal of hard money. The South Korean mint suddenly, last week, suspended gold bar sales. The organization said, quote, facing problems with sourcing supply and managing demand, unquote. More evidence that the big physical squeeze is on. This is what I'm telling you. There is a squeeze starting first in gold, and when silver catches up, whiplash. You're running out of time to establish a position. And it's going to be better than any squeeze play in AMC, GME, Roaring Kitty, anything. Because they're just playing you for fools there. Me too. I mean, I'm not leaving myself out. But there's no CEOs here in gold and silver. There's no Jeff Smiths and Philip Valliers and Kurt and Seth Smiths in this space. For decades, major things are happening. It's glorious to see the big squeeze finally taking shape. For decades, big banks have been manipulating the price of gold and silver lower. They've been fined for it many times, JP Morgan. But hey, cost of business. They don't go to jail. The Seth and Kurt don't go to jail. I think these shenanigans may be over. They've been fined for it many times, but it's always a fraction of their profits. It's likely that many bullion depositories have leased out too much of their holdings. Does that sound like your broker-dealers? Does that sound like the prime brokers? Does that sound like the canard that is Wall Street today in stocks, bonds, real estate, retirement funds, and physical metals. It is likely that many bullion depositories have leased out too much of their holdings. What does too much of their holdings mean? That means they leased it all out and then started leasing gold that doesn't exist, and silver. These depositories may not be capable of delivering their customers' metal in a timely manner, or they possibly can't deliver the customer's metal at all. Now that the physical and gold and physical silver squeezes are actually happening, they're happening. We're about to see who gets exposed as the tide goes out. That always reminds me that, that's Warren Buffett said that you see who's swimming naked when the tide goes out. That always reminds me of the scene in Dr. Moran's book about his client, Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill famously would bathe, walk around in the nude, no matter who was watching, and he'd swim in the nude. And he grumbled when, I think it was south of France, he just waddled into the Mediterranean in his birthday suit, and the reporters are all around clicking and clacking. And I guess Churchill said something like, I don't understand what all the fuss is. I'm no bathing beauty. Anyway, we're about to see who gets exposed as the tide goes out. During times like these, it is extra important to own physical bullion. What is bullion? It's gold, it's silver. If you buy an ETF, I strongly recommend buying Sprott's PHYS for gold and PSLV for silver. Where did you hear that first, by the way? When I say that, I'm not trying to brag on myself. I'm just saying you've been hearing this for a while. Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to say that there's some credibility in my point of view. I strongly recommend PHYS for gold and PSLV for silver. These options have slightly higher expense ratios than GLD and SLV. You know why? GLD and SLV, they probably don't have the cost of storage because they're not storing anything. But this guy's Adam Sharp. Adam Sharp believes that PHYS and PSLV have all the metal they claim to have. I put gold and GLD and SLV in the, quote, could be exposed during the low tide, unquote, category. Many have speculated that these ETFs may hold a portion, I think more than a portion, of their metal as paper contracts or even in unallocated vaults. I don't claim to know for sure, Adam says, and I don't either, but the Sprott products are my preferred option, as I've told you for 2 years now. Of course, physical bullion is a fantastic option as well. Gold is at all-time highs, but we think gold is just getting started. And that's the end of that article. Now, I'm gonna sign off in about half an hour, and then come back on. I'm just gonna go get a cup of coffee. I'm gonna come back on for him. I want to show you something before him comes on. I just want to show you my position of G-Bucks. It's in my IRA, 99 shares. Anyway, I'm down. You see, I'm down $60 on my position. So I paid top price for it. It's in my IRA, so what I'm going to do if it runs, and that's why I bought it, just in case there is a squeeze. It'd be fun to be in one. I'm going to move that money, if there's a profit, to Railtown, RLAIF, and I don't know if I'm going to have enough time to talk about that here, but I could do it maybe after Ham is done. But I think Railtown has a chance. If you don't have $3,000 or $4,000 to buy 100 ounces of silver, I think Railtown has a chance to give you enough money to buy 100 ounces of silver. You might pay $40 for it, or $50 or $60 for that silver, or more by the time Railtown goes up. But I think Railtown has that potential. So the final thing I wanted to talk about, and I have to do it kind of in a quick fashion, I've only got a few minutes, is, you know, my views on the slaughter of tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people going on in the Middle East. And I don't want to be provocative on that. But I've been negative about Marco Rubio, and minus my reservations about his very close fealty to a man I consider a war criminal, Benjamin Netanyahu. I think Marco Rubio might be the next president. He certainly has impressed me. He put out a report. It's 58 pages. I'm not going to read it to you, but I'm going to hit some of the highlights. It's called The World China Made. The World China Made. And the subtitle is Made in China 2025, 9 years later. So this is a report by Marco Rubio. I'll read the foreword. Meeting the China Challenge. This is written by Marco Rubio as a senator. Communist China is the most powerful adversary the United States has faced in living memory. This is no exaggeration. We sometimes forget that past enemies, including Nazi Germany and Soviet Russia, had smaller economies than we did. Each tried to take over its neighbors and hurt our country in the process. Each failed because America outbuilt and outgunned it. However, the Chinese Communist Party is playing a better hand, as it controls the largest industrial base in the world, fuels its factories with market-distorting subsidies and rampant theft. Bill Clinton, George Bush, Hillary Clinton, Joe Robinette Biden. And as this report highlights, China now leads in many of the industries that will determine geopolitical supremacy in the 21st century, from shipbuilding to electric vehicles. This means Beijing will have greater sway over which set of values define the 21st century. Liberty and representative government, debatable if we have either, or authoritarianism and oppression. It's not really debatable that that's what China has. To make matters worse, the United States is in a weaker position than it was in the past. Decades of over-regulation and quote-unquote free trade with adversarial economies like China's have eroded our industrial base. Shuttered factories, drugs, illegal immigration have destroyed small-town communities in the United States. 4 years of the Biden-Harris administration appeasing our adversaries abroad, rising the cost of living at home, and undermining our economy with red tape, endless reviews, and woke diversity mandates haven't helped. For years, I've raised the alarm about this. I've introduced countless bills to stop Beijing's predatory behavior and start the process of rebuilding America's factories and communities. These include efforts to protect American technology from espionage, empower the American audio industry to beat subsidized Chinese competitors, and hold companies accountable for using Uyghurs' slave labor, among others. This report is my latest effort. It is a wake-up call about how serious the threat we face has become. No longer can we fall back on the old dogmas. Blah, blah, blah. Marco Rubio. All right. The intro, he wrote this report 9 years ago. Since then, it was unveiled. Since it was unveiled in 2015, MIC 2025 has undergone changes in marketing and emphasis. That is Made in China 2025. China created an ambitious plan called Made in China 2025. And the plan was to overtake the United States in high-value, high-technology sectors. And this article is about how China has done in the last decade. The main goal of the strategy is to turn China into a manufacturing powerhouse. That's what the United States used to be. Make China self-reliant, achieve technological leadership for China, make sure that China has supply chain dominance, and to make sure that China has global economic supremacy. This report that Rubio wrote finds that China has reached or is about to reach the technological cutting edge in most of the sectors targeted. Of the 10 sectors targeted in the Chinese plan, now remember, we don't have that. China has a communist government above that can lead the economy with 5-year plans. We don't have that. And then down below, China has capitalism, like we do. So the 10 sectors, China now can claim to be the world leader in 4: electric vehicles, energy and power generation, shipbuilding, and high-speed rail. China is therefore shaping up to be a superpower of green energy and advanced logistics, often in areas of military application. In 5 sector, China has made substantial progress towards the technology frontier, but it's not yet the leader. Aerospace and aviation, biotechnology. Look at biotechnology. Think of that company that I'm forgetting the name of right now that trades at 25 cents, Northwest Bio. What China does, after bribing the Bidens and bribing the Clintons and cozying up to our big banks, what China does, how do you know they don't? They help move forward an era of 2 decades where money is stolen from U.S. companies and U.S. investors in biotech. And the shares get shorted into oblivion. And then the companies go bankrupt, which means there's no closing transaction, there's no taxes paid, the money goes offshore, and the trades go offshore, where China's allies in Europe hide the trades. And guess what China does? They get the technology. They can buy the patent. MMAT. China has made substantial progress in aerospace and aviation, biotechnology, new materials, MMAT, robotics and machine tools, and semiconductors. In just 1 sector, agricultural machinery, has China fallen short. If Xi Jinping were a fund manager, he would have every reason to be pleased with the portfolio performance. His plan, MIC 2025, had other macro goals. In sum, China is by far the world's leading exporter. China has built a formidable system for research and development using our universities, but now they have some of the best universities in the world. China has produced household name brands. Maybe you don't know them, but other parts of the world. China has a highly connected and automated industrial base and is the world's leader in green products. The developed world is accustomed to looking down on China as a second-rate power. The default attitude is that the United States has specialized knowledge and abilities that China lacks. We are the teacher, China is the pupil. This position naturally lends itself to a merely defensive strategy to keep China from stealing or otherwise obtaining what we already have. This is an outdated view. This strategy cannot be our only response. The United States must now act to avoid living in a world where China is the teacher and we are the pupil. Unfortunately, this is the world China is making. MIC 2025 is sometimes presented as a modern-day policy innovation on the part of the Chinese state. But it is the continuation of decades of industrial policy ingrained in the DNA of communist countries. All right, I'm just going to skip. Here are the 9 here are the 9 strategic tasks and priorities under MIC 2025. 1, improve innovation. 2, well, I'll read the whole thing. Improve national manufacturing innovation capabilities. 2, promote the deep integration of information and industrialization. 3, strengthen basic industrial capabilities. 4, strengthen quality brand building. 5, fully implement green manufacturing. 6, promote breakthrough development in key fields. 7, deepen promotion of structural adjustments to manufacturing industry. 8, actively develop service-oriented manufacturing producer services. 9, improve the level of internalized development of the manufacturing industry. All right, let's just skip down. I want to show you one chart. I'm going to show you one chart I put up. Here it is. This is industrial robots. Installation of industrial robots. China. This is 2 years ago. Japan, United States, we lag behind. What do you think if you were building an industrial powerhouse for the future? Would you do it on aging population, or would you do it with robots? All right, I'm going to quickly go through actually, I'm just going to go to the summary, and then I'll go to comments, and then I'm going to go get a cup of coffee and sign back on. All right, the conclusion. I'm skipping 57 pages of report. Conclusion. Commentary on China's economy swings wildly between extremes. On the one hand, the Chinese economy is often portrayed as deeply troubled, perhaps even on the verge of collapse. This is written by Marco Rubio. Stories in this vein emphasize China's very high debt burden, slowing growth, distressed real estate sector, aging population, which are all real problems. President Joe Biden repeated a version of this argument in an interview with Time magazine in June, where he stated that China's economy is on the brink. He said, "Name me, would you trade places with Xi Jinping and any other country? Not a joke. I'm being deadly earnest. A rhetorical question, but would you? You've got a population that's considered older than the vast majority of the youth in Europe. Not a joke. That is too old to work, and they're xenophobic. Where is it coming from? Where is it going to grow? You've got an economy that's on the brink there. The idea that their economy is booming, give me a break," unquote. On the other hand, there is growing awareness and alarm about China's dominant position in high-tech sectors deemed critical to the future of the world economy. President Biden's attempts to wall off American auto industry from Chinese competition show he's aware of this fact. Can these stories be reconciled? Perhaps. It may be the case that China's export and manufacturing-oriented development model has been successful enough to propel China to the technology frontier in the short term, but not successful enough to help the country outrun its structural problems in the long term. This certainly is the narrative many in Washington prefer, as it recalls our victory in the Cold War. Then, an innovative, dynamic, and capitalist United States triumphed over an adversary with a gerun, gerontocratic, gerontocratic, I guess an old and dysfunctional political class, sounds like Joe Biden and the Democrats, and a communist economic model, sounds like DEI, incapable of managing the transition to the information age, sounds like the New York Times. It is tempting to believe that a similar triumph is now assured because our nation has been so successful in the past. We win, they lose. But an invincible belief in one's own success is a recipe for complacency. And increasingly, this belief is at odds with the evidence in front of our faces. If this report conveys any message, let it be that the United States cannot be complacent about communist China. Think tank scholars and economists may bank on China's coming collapse. Beijing is tanking the other side of that. Sorry, my eyesight. Beijing is taking the other side of that wager. It believes that manufacturing, exports, new quality productive forces are the keys to the regime's survival and to the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. It believes that technology and production will enable China to preserve its communist system while becoming a rich country. So far, it has succeeded in blazing this alternative development path. But suppose today is the high water mark of China's power. Even such an optimistic scenario, the CCP will still represent a real existential threat to American industry and workers for years to come. And blah, blah, blah. The United States must act urgently. All right, it goes on for 3 more paragraphs. But I am going to spend 10 or 15 minutes, then I'm going to sign off and then go get a cup of coffee. I'll come back on at 3:45, 3:50, and we'll get ready for him. Oh my God. Oh my God. Doge uncovers millions of Americans listed between 110 and 360 years old. I don't see this crash. Oh, here it is. Oh my gosh. A Delta plane crashed at Toronto's International Airport Monday. 8 people were injured. Minnesota to Toronto. All passengers and crew were accounted for. Wow. So it's a developing story. Robert's right about that. Real estate's down. I don't know if I agree with Marco Rubio's assessment. What I'm trying to weave, though, Robert, is and I guess I don't know that I have enough time to go back over it all, but I think the United States, after years of ignoring our neighbor's daughter as just being a tomboy and geeky and a bit of a brat, we're turning around and noticing she's a full-grown, beautiful woman. In other words, China is our equal. We, I think, rather cavalierly gave away a lot of our strengths to China. And I think we should be friends with China. I think we should be friends with Russia. And I actually think that's what Trump wants us to go back to, is a multipolar world where we're not carrying the cost of Europe or the Biden family or the Samantha Powers of the world who come to government. I remember when my dad got in government, he was so concerned of being honest, and there was no spending on his family. But now they come in, they make 10, 20, 30 million dollars. It's a matter of course. I think Trump realizes that to compete with China, we're going to have to change our defense model. We're going to have to change our financial system, and we're going to have to change our obligations. That's, I guess, what I'm kind of trying to point out. There's some other things on my list, but I just ran out of being able to talk about them. Do I believe Gary Gensler has fully... Are you an asshole, or are you I'm going to assume you're still a valid listener here, but look, I'm hard on Gary Gensler, but I don't think that's fair. I assume you're talking about his sexual orientation. I don't think that's fair. Their high-speed rail is beginning to fail. Well, Robert, I think if we were to enter into economic agreements with Russia, and I think we should, I think the Russians are so similar to Americans in outlook that one of China's weaknesses is energy. Another one is the pollution they have. Another is fresh water. Another is desertification. Another is the population in China is collapsing. I've followed, I can't remember her name, a doctor, PhD on Chinese population. She was Chinese, and she thinks the official numbers are totally wrong, and she thinks the population in China is well below that of India. So yeah, there's a lot of issues, but this is not to say that there isn't a reckoning coming for the U.S. financial system. And that's all I'm... all right. Sorry, I misunderstood you. No, I don't think he's going to retire. I think Gary Gensler will be on the board of many companies. I would imagine he'll take a position at Goldman Sachs. But if not, he'll probably be on the board of one of the big law firms. Do you ever answer any questions or just ramble on for days? Well, I'm not going to answer either of those questions. G-Bucks, I don't have a Moo account, but E-Trade, you can buy it. I'll talk, somebody texted me, I guess, I don't know what it was, it popped up, saying that Railtown is never going up and all that. I don't have time to talk about Railtown. I think Railtown, as I've expressed many times, is going to do very well in the near term. One thing that keeps coming in is instant rewards. I'm not promising instant rewards, but I think quick rewards. Did Gary Gensler quit because he knew Trump and Elon were about to make... No, no, I think Gary Gensler hung around because he wanted to be Treasury Secretary under a Kamala Harris presidency. And when that didn't happen, I just think he wants to cash out the favors that he accrued for Goldman Sachs and Kenny G, and go work on Wall Street or go work on as a lawyer rainmaker and double his fortune from 150 million to maybe 300, 400, 500 million. That's what I think he's going to do. China is the leader in solar only because they're willing to poison. That, I think, Robert, is true. I think the environmental risks they're taking are massive. I would ask you, though, Robert, what role do we play in that? Because we demand everyone shift to solar energy, but we allow it to be produced in China. So in a way, we're complicit in that environmental damage. But you're right about that. Why are we spending $1.6 billion annually to spew out negative propaganda? Exactly, Mitchell. I also listened to somebody, this was about 4 weeks ago, but talking, China is the world's largest manufacturer of automobiles. And they build a truck. It's pretty basic truck. I'm not even sure. I'm not even sure you could put your 7-Eleven Slurpee in the middle, but they sell it for under 20 grand. I think it's under 10 grand. And the rest of the world wants transportation. A swarm of drones eliminates their solar. Yeah, but they have drones too, and a swarm of their drones can eliminate, and maybe an aircraft carrier. They're the world's largest shipbuilder. I don't think we want to frame our relationship with China in war. I think we'd be better off sticking with economic rivals, but also cooperation. I appreciate some of this negative feedback. I am really trying to emphasize in the only limited way I know how, that accumulation of trends is causing the complete shakeup of everything you take for granted, including know-it-alls that trade stock in their underwear that doesn't exist. Our lives are going to change. And, if 10 of you, if 12 of you, if 5 of you start taking seriously, and I'm not really in a position to do it for myself, but I don't have a family. My assets, I guess, in a bit of Dickensian or or maybe more like Kafka. I don't know. Anyway, I'm not in a position really to do the things that I'm suggesting, but I'd like to get there if I can. You have to think like a central bank. You have to get ready for the revaluation of precious metals. Put differently, for the collapse in purchasing power of everything you hold dear, which are the dollars you accumulate by shorting stocks that don't exist. But thank you, Sana. So now what? I agree with this, Robert. I agree with everything you're saying, Robert. I think the steel they use, from what I hear, is they haven't figured out that step that we have. Look, I'm not trying to be negative on the United States. I'm trying to wake up. I actually think the United States, and I think Joe Biden has a bit of a point. People want to come here. I don't know many people scrambling to move to China. So I think we can change our message, bring integrity back to our markets, bring integrity back to our legal system, to journalism, to our electoral process. And I think the United States can recover from our self-inflicted wounds. Marco Rubio has been anti-China forever. He is wrong in many respects. Well, I don't know enough about I can't pronounce it, the Uyghurs. I find Marco Rubio is totally wrong on his Middle Eastern stance. That's my opinion. So I accept that he could be wrong on his views on China, but he's Secretary of State. All I'm trying to say is the framework of thinking in our government it's as if, they went in dressed as Clark Kent and they're coming out dressed as Superman. I'm not trying to say that putting a value equation on it, but our policies are changing in front of your eyes. That's all I'm trying to say. Yep, Doge is going to crack down on SEC corruption. All right, will an audit of SEC help MMTLP? I guess if it includes going through the records of FINRA, because that's where I think the criminality is. But I'm not so sure. I don't know. I think we'll have to keep up our pressures. The destruction of America has been going on longer than 4 years. Yeah, I think it has. I think it's been everything ebbs and flows. Everything's in cycles. But I think if I had to pick a time, it might be the Los Alamos labs under Bill Clinton. That might be the turning point. But I don't know. History will figure that out for us, won't it? I don't think it was Jimmy Carter. I don't think it was Richard Nixon. I don't think it was Gerald Ford or Kennedy. I would say I don't think it was Ronald Reagan. So I would say maybe the turning point was Bill Clinton with to my memory, the first instance was Los Alamos Labs. Yeah, 99 is better than 0. All right, it's 3:36. I'm going to go get a cup of coffee. I know I didn't answer everything. I'm going to sign off here. We're going to join I'm just going to walk up, get a coffee, and come back. Maybe grab an apple or something. And then I'll sign back in for Hamster. So thanks for tuning in. and we'll see you in a few minutes. Cheers.